my colleague, Dr. Gabrielle Roche-McNally, who directs our National Women for the Land initiative. She has put together a terrific panel for this next session, which is working with diverse landowners and operators. And I will let Gabrielle in turn introduce our panelists, but I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for being part of this. Really appreciate it. And with that, Gabrielle, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good to be here, everyone. Sorry, I heard a little weird feedback, but I'm sure, okay, now it's better. So just wanted to kick things off again. Gabrielle Roche-McNally, I direct our Women for Land initiative. I'm also the lead evaluator for this project, which means that some of you actually, because there's a bit of overlap in entities who participated in previous trainings, I may have chatted with some of you in the past, and some of you I will be planning to chat with you in the future. You've conducted some survey work with us, and we'll also be doing some in-depth interviews with some of you in a year from now. So just to note that I wear a couple different hats here. So great to be here. This is a session that we've hosted at each of these trainings, and I've had the sort of privilege to invite awesome panelists to join me in a conversation about how to reach historically underserved producers in the work we do. I'm about to share my screen and give a short little presentation, and at which time I will introduce the panelists. I have one person I'm still waiting for, and we'll check in with her in a minute. But I just like to sort of note for folks as you're kind of thinking about this training, you know, the focus is not necessarily outreach to historically underserved producers. And we recognize that many of you are working with landowners who come to you who are interested in protecting their land. Some of you have rosters of perhaps more diverse land ownership, but we recognize, as I'll talk in a little bit about the sort of the demographics of land ownership in this country is predominantly white. It's still very male. But we also want to sort of offer this session, not just sort of related to the soil health work you're doing or the current work that you're doing, mostly at land trusts, but also to get you thinking about how do we broaden our outreach and engagement with historically underserved producers in our collective work. So I'm going to present some slides. I'll introduce my panelists and ask them some questions. And then at the last part of the session, we are going to do a breakout session with our panelists sprinkled throughout, and we'll be kind of putting the question back to you and asking you to think about how are you already engaging historically underserved audiences, or how might you? This doesn't have to look one way for any of us, depending on the work we do. Anyhow, I'm going to dive into my slides, but I just wanted to provide a little bit of that overview and context. So let me share my screen. Okay. I'm still not the best at this platform, so let me see. Okay. Oh, you're not. Let's see. You're still seeing my presenter view.
So Gabrielle, what we've noticed is that you have to start the presentation and then share your screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that note.
No, it's new to us too.
Okay. All right. There we go. All right. So I think I've already kind of shared with you about kind of what the focus of this session will be. We're going to kind of emphasize a few different groups of folks who we might consider historically underserved, and I'll unpack that term in a little bit, but we will kind of emphasize women producers, non-operating landowners, and other folks who might be considered socially disadvantaged based on their race, their ethnicity, their veteran status. So I'll kind of share a little bit about that. And then I'll be joined by 4 wonderful folks from a diversity of organizations. And again, to my panelists, I promise to give you a proper introduction here in just a little bit. So just as a kind of, you know, to shamelessly plug the initiative that I direct, our Women for the Land initiative works here at AFT, and we really work to engage women and I would say increasingly non-binary farmers and landowners to do the work of protecting their land and embracing conservation. And that takes a lot of different forms across the country, but I would just like to kind of highlight that for the group. So when we think about how the USDA kind of defines this term socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, I like to highlight this just because it kind of helps us understand how people might qualify for different programs, particularly when we think about federal funding. So, and for many USDA programs, sort of this socially disadvantaged farmer and rancher sort of thought is one way to be considered historically underserved. And you can see the kind of list of folks who are kind of considered socially disadvantaged. Not everyone loves the sort of connotations of that term. We often use the sort of historically underserved or continually disserved groups, and sometimes sort of we bring in sort of in terms of the definitions that are out there with USDA, veterans, new and beginning farmers, limited resource farmers, and then women are often included in some categories and not otherwise others, depending on kind of which agency you're working with. So that's kind of for you just to kind of keep in your understanding of kind of how, at least at a federal level, and then states look at these things as well, kind of how people cut up these kinds of identities and provide targeted programming. But today we're going to kind of take a more expansive view of this. Obviously, my work is focused a lot on gender equity in agriculture, so I'm going to kind of start in that place and then talk a little bit about some other issues. Based on our past census, I haven't updated these numbers yet with the most recent agricultural census, but we see that 36% of our producers in the country are women. More than half of all farms in the U.S. And farms and ranches have a female producer who is involved in decision making. When we look at that along racial lines, a much smaller number of landowners, 2% are non-white. And depending on where you are, there's a lot that's obscured in that. There's some places where there's greater representation, but still the numbers are very low. The future, though, is more diverse. So when we look at a lot of the research on new and beginning farmers and ranchers, we see, right, there's this sort of transition happening on the landscape, of which we've already spoken a bit about it in the context of this training. We know that this sort of upcoming generation is increasingly female. In some instances, it's 60% plus, based on some surveying work that others in the field have done. And we know it's more racially diverse as well, and it's younger. So there is a new generation of farmers who are engaged and want to be engaged on the land and in agriculture. And then I always like to highlight kind of the percent of rented lands and how critical this audience of sort of non-operating landlords are. So they make up nearly 50% of sort of the ownership of farm and ranch land in the US, and almost half of those are women. So again, sometimes an audience that gets missed in some of our work. Certainly, definitely something that land trusts are thinking about a little bit more than some other conservation organizations, but a critical audience, and at least from a gender perspective, much more sort of parity in terms of ownership. A couple other things that I might just sort of highlight here. I'll just click through here. Half of ASAP/AL easements are held by women and women-run organizations, which I think is really interesting and a positive sign. I've already mentioned this sort of greater racial and ethnic diversity, particularly among women primary producers. In a recent peer review research that we highlighted in a gender equity report we put out, though, we still find that farming, and we can include ranching in that, is still one of the most unequal professions in the United States when we look particularly at wage and income inequality. So on average, women are operating smaller acreages, earning less income than farms operated by men, and that's after we control for farm size and operator characteristics. And we like to just highlight that some of the sort of structural systemic challenges that women face are connected to a whole bunch of things, but we know access to childcare, healthcare, and really their sort of ability to access resource and hone their skills in agriculture definitely impacts their ability to advance in the field. I've already mentioned non-operating landowners, but this is a sort of area where we spend a lot of time and research at AFT. I consider them an underserved audience because we often don't direct, at least in the context of a lot of the conservation work we do, we often don't engage with them. I know it's probably increasingly an audience that folks on this call are engaging with, but we are aware of the fact that sort of a huge percentage of these NOLs, like I said, nearly 50% are women. And there's a lot of trust in farm operators. There's willingness to make changes to support conservation, like soil health practices. And there's a strong desire to keep farmland and farming, but not always a clear succession plan in place. So we produced a report a couple of years ago now, and then state level reports kind of looking at NOLs. So for folks who are particularly interested in that, we may have data on your state in particular. I think it's just important to note this can be an audience that we overlook sometimes. There's a lot more to say than one slide in terms of the kind of impact of systemic oppression, discrimination, and land loss in the US, but just kind of a reminder of how much sort of dispossession has happened in the United States, both through colonial dispossession of indigenous lands, as well as land loss experienced by many farmers of color, in particular, maybe most glaringly so with African Americans who kind of lost billions of dollars of wealth over the last century and predominantly through the loss of land. We know discrimination is still happening, both in explicit and implicit ways. Been some pretty high level. One of the biggest civil rights cases, Pigford versus Glickman, associated with USDA lending practices. Still doesn't seem like that big of a cash relief that came out of that, but it was sort of a historic bill at the time. We know that there are these structural barriers to accessing and owning land. And as I've mentioned, the sort of dispossession and fractionated lands. I think I mentioned, I'll mention just, heirs property is another issue that greatly impacts a lot of producers we work with. It predominantly has impacted African American landowners, particularly in the Southeast, but it is an issue across the country. For those of you not super aware, the sort of fractionated land ownership model that sort of leaves land heavily vulnerable to transition, loss, development, because there's no clear heir in place, or at least there's many heirs in place and not sort of a good plan for sort of how to store that land and keep it in agriculture. And of course, that sort of fractionated land has disproportionately affected Black farmers. And I don't, we don't spend a lot of time on this at AFT or in this training, but I always like to sort of raise the issue around both land loss, but also movements that are sort of focused on land back, and thinking about reparations in the form of land and how can we make land more accessible. Others are working in this space thinking about how can we at least make land more accessible for communities who have been dispossessed. So is that accessing first foods for Indigenous communities? How can we sort of make these land assets serve more people than perhaps they've served in the past, given this history of land loss and dispossession? So I am going, I'll just say I'm going to move on to, I think, a more happy topic, or at least I'm more happy to sort of suggest that I have amazing panelists who I want to share with you here today. So I'm going to just give a really quick overview. I'm going to introduce Cole Bush, who runs Shepherdess Lands and Livestock, and in a minute I'll ask Cole to introduce themselves. And Brittany has done some awesome work developing her sort of vegetation management services, but has also done a lot of work to engage and support the next generation. Cole, we've worked with Cole through some of our Women for the Land programming, and that has been wonderful. If you've ever watched any of our videos about Women for the Land, we've got a great promo there with Cole, but really great to have Cole here today. Reagan Velasquez is joining us, who's a consultant with Colorado Open Lands. I believe we've got some Colorado Open Lands folks here. Reagan has been ranching for a long time, also had an amazing career working with REI, testing equipment and materials, which I want to know more about that part of your career, Reagan, at some point, and is also doing work in Colorado to reach more diverse landowners and producers in the ranching world. And again, we'll let him share more in a minute. Deidre Steens, who I think did join us. Welcome, Deidre. who runs Black Gold Resourcing and is based in Texas. Deidre is also a rancher and has won some awards for her sort of innovative and engaging work to sort of develop more regenerative agriculture, both on her land, but also in reaching more diverse landowners in her, I believe, home state of Texas. So great to have Deidre here. And finally, Cecilia Rossiker, I hope I'm saying your last name. I realized I didn't ask you how to pronounce it, from Rio Grande Agricultural Land Trust. And Cecilia is one of our trainees here as well. We also asked her to sit on this panel. She's been executive director of the Rio Grande Agricultural Land Trust since 2007. She also runs her own 30-acre certified organic farm and serves the Albuquerque area. So I hope what you can see through that sort of amazing list of panelists is really a diversity of perspectives, of growing experience and sort of lived experience, as well as meeting the needs of a diversity of stakeholders in their communities. So I'm gonna invite my panelists to join me here. I'm gonna take my camera, or I should say, I'll stop sharing in just a minute, and I'll also post this question in the context of the chat box, but just so I can kind of pose it to all of you. They have seen this before, but just to remind us, we'll go around, and I think we'll just go around in the order of your introductions. I know I did not introduce any of you to the extent of which you have experience and expertise. I wanted to keep it brief, but I'm asking you to share a little bit about yourself and the work you do on the land. And I'm going to kind of combine this with this question about sort of lessons that you've learned working, either sort of engaging underserved communities in the work you do, or facing the challenges that you've kind of confronted as perhaps sharing identities with folks who are considered underserved or not well served by our current resources. So I'm going to invite our team again, asking Cole, Reagan, Deidre, and then Cecilia to respond to that question. I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see everybody a little bit better. And I'll pass it to you, Cole.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And all y'all from all around the country. Oh my gosh, you are just little boxes with initials. So if you want to show me your face, then I know who I'm talking to. That's always great. It's okay if you're eating chips. I'm fine with that. Thank you so much for me seeing your face. I like to talk to people. Thank you for the wave. My name is Cole Bush. Again, I'm the owner-operator of Shepherdess Land and Livestock, and we provide vegetation management services in Los Angeles County and Ventura County in Southern California. I do not identify as a rancher or farmer. I identify as a grazier. I do not actually own a piece of land. I do have a land lease, but for most of the year, I am out on public and private lands, including land trust land, who we are contracted with to provide vegetation management services. I'm a first generation agrarian. I am an identified lady, and I also am very tied into our urban communities. I think I'm a city kid, but I am running with sheep and goats as a grazier, moving with the seasons. I'm also the founder of a Grazing School of the West, which we're really focused on how do we provide the training and education on the professional development, vocational development side for new folks from non-traditional backgrounds to get into this work. And I'm happy to say I'm able to share my personal experiences, the challenges, trials and tribulations, and how I've gotten through them through this program. And I provide consulting and technical assistance, like many of you, for others looking to enter this work and those who support this work. So thank you so much for having me here. I hope I can contribute to stand up and speak for those like myself who have worked very hard to get into this work and face a lot of challenges. We need folks like you dedicated to supporting us on the land. So thank you for taking the time to learn about us.
Thank you, Cole. Reagan, can you join us?
I sure can. Thank you for inviting me and welcome everybody. So my name's Regan Velasquez. I'm in Southern Colorado. which is a community, the San Luis Valley. It's the highest agricultural valley in the United States. We are 60 miles by 100 miles, high desert, average rainfall about 9 to 12 inches a year. My wife and I have a ranch and do a cow-calf operation where we provide direct-to-consumer beef with to the local community, direct-to-consumer. Few challenges there. A lot of the individuals that we sell to are transplants to the area and realize the value of high-quality food, whereas the locals don't necessarily have that same value. I'm also a master gardener. So when I moved back to the area 3 years ago, after a 32-year career in the outdoor industry, I became a master gardener and got really involved in fielding mainly questions about grassland. So one of the issues we have in this area is it's being subdivided into 15 to 40 acre tracts of land, nothing but rabbit brush and sage on it. And the first thing people want to do is come in and knock it all down and put something in. So I filled a lot of those questions on what should we put in, what should we do, what should we not do. I also work with Colorado Open Lands as a consultant and contractor, getting underserved producers enrolled in the Colorado Healthy Soil Program. So it used to be called Star Plus, but for some reason they had to change the name. So it's now called Colorado Healthy Soil Program. And my job is to work with the producers, get them enrolled, and then help them overcome the barriers of incorporating healthy soil practices into their land. Some of the things that I've already run into is two of my producers do not have a computer or internet access or email. So communicating with them is really difficult. There's lots of information that comes across my desk that I want to forward on to producers about soil health or a good webinar or something that's coming up, but not everybody can take advantage of that. That's about it. I enjoy farming, ranching. It's been in my blood since I was a kid, fourth generation rancher. My grandparents and my grandfather and great grandfather both did sheep, and my father grew up doing sheep in the mountains and he hated it. So when he became of age, he got rid of sheep and went to cows.
Thanks, Regan. Let's hear from Deidre now.
Hi, good evening. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Gabrielle. My name is Deidre Steens. I am a fourth and fifth generation cattle rancher from South Texas.
And Deidre, can I just interrupt you for 1 sec? We don't see your, I'm not seeing your video. Am I the only one not seeing your video?
I've been tinkering with it.
Okay.
I'm using a laptop from someone who is an extreme introvert and does not like cameras. I'm guessing that could be the problem.
Okay. No worries. I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to, if it was a quick fix, then I was
I'm kind of bummed. I'm really bummed about it today, Gabrielle, because normally every day I look like a rancher, and today I'm actually dressed up, got all ready for this, and nobody can see me. But I'm grateful, really grateful to be here. I appreciate you inviting me to this platform, and just a little about myself. I am definitely I fit into some of the subgroups of I'm a woman. I'm African American and fifth generation farmer, again from South Texas. So we're located in between San Antonio and Austin, Texas, just to give reference. I currently manage a 220 acre multi-species grazing operation. We are transitioning from a conventional cow-calf operation to a multi-species regenerative grazing operation. And so I'm taking both the practices and principles that my grandparents used during my childhood, and combining those with a lot of the math and science that I find helpful from organizations like Holistic Management International, in our attempts to make this transition, obviously for the benefit of our soil and water in the area. Luling is the actual town where we're located, and that area of Texas is known for oil and cattle and barbecue. So in the last 20 years, as oil production has declined, a lot of cattle ranches are left with the debris, and the infrastructure. So we do a number of things, including implementing conservation contracts and cleaning up some of those old abandoned materials. We repurpose also what we can to reuse. But the name of my agency is Black Gold Resourcing, and I started Black Gold Resourcing in 2018 as I transitioned out of the classroom as an educator in an attempt to help save my family's farming legacy. Unfortunately, in 2022, we did lose a 54-acre tract of land that my parents had purchased the year that I was born, with hopes of really being able to realize a dream of continuing an agriculture legacy. So that was a setback, but today we are just learning how to become better stewards and better managers of the land that we do still have. I enjoy traveling. I travel the country and give presentations on land loss prevention efforts. Today, I'm joining you all from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. I was here for their field day speaking on generational transfers. So I am excited to be here and really looking forward to all of the conversations and what comes from these conversations, and strengthening the network of incredible soil stewards out here. So thank you.
Thank you, Deidre. I really appreciate that, and appreciate all of you for being here. And last but certainly not least, Cecilia, not seeing you on, I know you're in there. There's a big group to look for. I know I saw you on there earlier.
Can't hear you.
You're on mute if you're trying to talk. Oh, yep.
Gabrielle, let me try emailing her. I saw her earlier, but I do not see her now.
I
Okay.
see her. She's in here.
Oh,
She might
is?
just be having microphone issues.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in here and her mic is unmuted.
Cecilia, are you out there? Well, we can move on to kind of my next round of questions for our presenters. But Cecilia, when if you hear this or you're going to come back, coming back in, just put a note in the chat perhaps and let us know you're ready. But we'll try to circle back to you. Well, maybe let me just pose, a few of you kind of highlighted some challenges, both your kind of lived experience challenges, this land loss, Deidre, that you shared. Reagan, you were sharing some of the challenges that folks have in kind of access resources. But I might go back to Cole and just see if you can share a little bit more about sort of reflecting on what are some of the challenges and kind of lessons you've learned about trying to reach that sort of next generation, more diverse group of folks who want to be land stewards, landowners, farmers, ranchers, or graziers as you are. What are they facing?
Yeah, thank you so much. First off, it's so good to hear the questions what are your challenges? Because there's help on the other side, which makes me really excited. So I would say, I got into this work 12 years ago, and I worked for a multi-generational sheep, Basque American sheep family. The woman who purchased the company I helped to start and manage, she came in with generational knowledge and she had sheep, she had equipment, she had land base, all of these things. it took me over 10 years to be able to start my own, not having a lot of the things that multi-generational farmers and ranchers, graziers come into. So I would say the hardest thing really for me, on the onset, I was lucky to be able to work with this company with multiple multi-generational folks. But I think that the entry point for new people getting into this work is very limited, because us who do operate our businesses have very little capacity to bring on a greenhorn who has no idea how to even use a ratchet strap. So what I realized is that the opportunity to get boots on the ground work for brand new folks is has been a challenge. Hence, Grazing School of the West, which is really focused on an audience who is non-traditional, perhaps coming from urban spaces. So the education, knowledge, and experience to learn what you don't know is really an important thing. Land access is obviously a huge piece, and I'm excited about this audience because I think there's a lot of opportunity for graziers to work with land trust because of the nature of our work moving around. And then just understanding how to go through all of the processes to find the resources that are there for us, but are very time consuming and sometimes over our head in trying to understand how to fill out some of this paperwork. So I think that, you know, I don't think I'm very unique in that my challenges are very similar to anybody trying to get into ag. But I would say that what I have found with the various people that I've worked for or worked with through Grazing School of the West is where do you start to get your feet wet when you don't have a lot of background or skill set to even know if it's something that you want to do or can do. And I'm dedicating a lot of my energies and my professional aspirations to helping people get boots on the ground experience. And I can get into further a little bit about the land piece a little bit later on.
Thanks, Cole. Now let's go back to Regan, and you can share a little bit more. You started touching on challenges, but what are some of the things you're helping folks navigate in Colorado on sort of accessing, soil health or land to ranch or farm on?
So we started regenerative ag back in 2021 when I moved back. And one of the biggest challenges I faced was, gosh, where do you start? Who do you go and talk to about electric fence when that kind of activity isn't being done here? So there wasn't a lot of regenerative ag in this general area. So basically, a lot of it was learned through the School of Hard Knocks, trial and error. The NRCS was really instrumental in helping us along. But what really helped us was 2 years prior to that, we started doing our homework on how do we sell our beef direct to the consumer? What are the steps? What do you have to look for? What is regenerative ag? What are the 5 soil health principles? So we started learning all that before we came into it, so we were a little bit more prepared. The physical hands-on stuff of doing the fence, I wish somebody would have told me early on, don't mess with wire, start with poly wire right away, because you're going to be much happier. Some of those small things that we had to learn along the way. Now, as I work with others and bringing them along the soil health trail, communication has been a really, really, really big struggle. The only way I really have been able to communicate with these people is face-to-face direct. It takes at least 2 or 3 contacts before you really make that headway to their dinner table, so to speak. And that's where I find it difficult is, breaking in, getting that one-on-one. But once you get that one-on-one, you develop that trust. And trust in this area is very, very, very critical, because historically, everybody has always been trying to take the land or the water or their resources some way, somehow from these people. So building that trust is very, very difficult. My goal was to get 10 producers in Coness County and Costilla County signed up for the Colorado Soil Health Program. I ended up getting my 10 producers, but it was a lot of effort, a lot of running to see them, putting up posters. I put posters all over the place, spent hundreds of dollars on posters. People don't respond to posters. They don't respond to, hey, there's a class going on, why don't you come to it? What they do respond to is that direct, hey, come to my class, come to my farm, come tour what I'm doing, come see what I'm doing. That's what I found has really worked the best, is bringing people out and show them what we've done on our property to get it in better shape than it was. That's where I found the most success.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really just want to put a pin on that sort of trust building exercise, how critical that is. And in my shared experience of reaching out to folks who have been underserved, who are disadvantaged for a variety of reasons, like building trust is critical, and note for all of us thinking about and doing this work. It's not a zero-sum game, and it's an ongoing process, but I really just want to note how critical that piece is. Deidre, and then I think, go ahead.
Right now.
Think about it. When somebody shows up on these farmers' land in an official shirt, the first thing that comes to mind is, what do you want? They're not thinking, oh, this person's here to help me, that's not the way these people think, because historically that's not the way it's been.
Thank you. Deidre, let's hear from you. And then I think Cecilia is making some contact. So we'll circle up to you after Deidre shares.
Okay. So operating here in Texas, one of the ways that I have been able to be effective at helping producers to tap into programs is with the use of a power of attorney. And I think that's because I focus mainly on USDA programs, assisting with getting farm and track numbers, program enrollment, and the NRCS program applications. So we provide those as a concierge style enrollment process to the USDA programs. Now, a lot of the challenge that we face in that process is with the initial steps of enrollment, with getting farm and track numbers, that there are some barriers to implementation or barriers to access within those programs, especially for some of the populations that I work with, the marginalized producers, the underserved producers, and air property participants. So I have found it very helpful to have relationships with the state executives in Texas and the surrounding states where necessary to help with this, because the challenges are typically encountered at the local level in the local offices. And there's so much pushback sometimes in the local offices that it is a daunting experience. I have myself taken months away from work after experiences that I've had with being in those offices. Last year about this time, I went to enroll a Navy veteran who is the only Black female farmer inside the city limits of Austin, and we had the police called on us while we were sitting filling out forms at the desk. And it was one of those things. Luckily, we were each other's witnesses because there was nobody else in that office. But I think those are extreme circumstances. But I've definitely had a lot of interest in helping producers access conservation programs. So I would say that it is a worthy attempt. It's a worthwhile attempt. We just have to be mindful of those things. When you're working with diverse landowners who have tried to, through their own will, go to the offices and get help and find out information, and have been shunned or turned away or just disregarded altogether. There is a lot of interest in, I think, the innovative practices of, grazing for soil health. People are very interested in how they can improve their pastures and how they can work with their soils to sequester more water or carbon. But navigating the how-to sometimes is a little bit, as we know, challenging. That's why we're having these conversations. What we've done to be successful in that is really just exposing ourselves to education, taking groups along with us to outreach events so people can hear information from a variety of sources. Sometimes, you may have a group that wants to hear it from the professionals, and they trust the folks in the white shirt with the logo, and they look official. Versus, someone like me, I'm a marginalized producer myself, and I have a lot of jeans and boots and t-shirts. So I may not look the part, but once I'm able to talk to them and engage them and answer questions, and build that trust and rapport, that goes a long way. I think the language, the language that we use, I'm in a position where I find myself, I'm comfortable talking in a certain way, but I also want to encourage myself to use language that I know the producers are going to see, and it will benefit them to know these terms that are, talking about soil health and being better stewards. Yes. So the other challenges that we have worked to overcome has been done through some safe to fail trials. So if I'm speaking on cover crops, for example, or encouraging someone to, try a cover crop to address a what's the word I'm looking for? To address an issue in their soils, and they'll say, well, what is cover crops? And that just opens up a whole other book of things that we can go into, but it piques their interest. So I would just say, language, resources, and safe to fail trials. We need more of, but those have been helpful in the work that I've been able to do.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Deidre. And I think one of the things you shared about sort of that supporting folks to go into some of these offices, I see that as a real opportunity for many of us working in this space. I like to uplift Ebony Alexander, who's the executive director of Black Family Land Trust, and also still, I believe, a board member at American Farmland Trust. And she calls it kind of sitting second chair, but helping folks just navigate, especially if you've experienced discrimination in those places. But for many folks who are intimidated by institutions, and that's a lot of folks, having someone there to sort of be a support person is so critical. So just want to kind of highlight that piece. But I want to move and welcome Cecilia to the panel. And I think you've got your audio working. I'd love to just invite you to introduce yourself a little bit more and share a little bit about kind of how you're working with underserved producers and some of the challenges that you're seeing.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Because last time it was said it was unmuted, but obviously it wasn't.
We can hear you.
Thanks again for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I am a multi-generation New Mexican. I grew up on a farm in northern New Mexico. It's actually my birthday today, and my parents reminded me that they had me when they were 17 and 18, and we had a small farm. And by the time they were 20, they had 3 kids. I'm the oldest of 7. Most of our agriculture was about producing food for ourselves. We raised goats, we had beef. It was a subsistence sort of farming situation, and a small farm. And so that was where I started in agriculture. New Mexico is about 40 to 45% Hispanic. So we are serving a demographic that fits that disadvantaged landowner situation. My situation growing up, where people had half a dozen or more kids, and by the time they were 25 had 7 or 8 kids and lived on small farms, is pretty typical of many of the rural areas of New Mexico. And those are very often the demographic we're serving. People who have had their land for many generations, dating back hundreds of years with the Spanish land grants. And I'm also the director of the Rio Grande Agricultural Land Trust, because growing up, what I saw is our farmland was quickly disappearing as more and more people moved into the Santa Fe area and Albuquerque area. That development was marching south, and so the land trust was formed at my kitchen table when our county, Socorro County, was considering zoning. And then we expanded our focus to serve the Middle Rio Grande, which is the most populated area of New Mexico. Most of the farmland I would say most of the farmland still belongs to these families that have had it for multi-generations. And so that's the demographic we're serving. Folks have a heart connection to the land. They want to protect it. They're land rich and cash poor. So our work with the Land Trust has really been focused on using programs, mainly federal programs. New Mexico finally this year just passed legislation to have a conservation program, and it's not very much money. So we try to use these federal programs, and those are really challenging because a lot of those take money to get in the game. And so we have been working with folks like American Farmland Trust and other partners to try to figure out ways to make these programs accessible to underserved producers. But really, I heard folks talking about trust, and all of our work, it starts there. And the way we establish trust when we are working with underserved landowners, our approach is always to go to them, to their property, and really to first and foremost listen. We're not here to educate anybody. We're interested in learning about them and their land and what their goals are. And then when we walk away from that, we can think about programs that will serve them, and we often bring some of our partners to them. We rarely ever send them to an office. We bring the programs to them, and we help them process through that application or whatever, or the positive and negatives of those programs and the challenges. So that's been our approach to serving underserved landowners. We, when talking about healthy soil issues, are really, again, it's about listening and really, because I have, I didn't even mention this. I have a 30-acre farm that is owned by me, a woman-owned farm. And I've been selling and producing for 30 years. I've been selling and producing to restaurants and grocery stores and farmers markets in Albuquerque and in Socorro County. So when I meet with them, we really do a peer-to-peer sort of conversation about what their challenges are and what my experience has everybody knows their land, and they know it better than I will ever know it. And you know the good spots, the bad spots, and you go and you just establish that trust and have that peer-to-peer conversation. And like I said, the most important thing I think is just to listen before you start filling them up with information, and then go from there. When you understand what their challenges are, guide them to some opportunities that might help them.
Thank you, Cecilia, and well said. I feel like that's such an important point to make. Well, I want to ask the panelists one more question, and then we'll kind of pivot into some breakouts where you all will get a chance to chat a little bit about what you're doing, but we'll also be inviting our panelists to sit in each of the rooms, so you can also ask them questions. And they won't all be in each room, so we're going to spread them out, but we want to sort of, foster some dialogue as you're thinking about either engaging this work or growing into this work. But my final question, at least for now, for the panelists, and I don't know, it seems like it's working well to go ahead and just stick with our same order if our panelists don't mind. So going back to Nicole, I'm going to post this in the Q&A too, so everyone can see it as well. But what are the opportunities that you see to engage more diverse communities in soil health conservation, farm preservation, and land access efforts? And I know, Cole, you wanted to talk a little bit more about land access, but with this last question, kind of thinking about what are the opportunities, and maybe, I don't want to say silver lining, but where's the potential to shift this kind of trajectory?
Well, I really love something that I heard from Cecilia, which was relationships, and Deidre as well. Relationships are so key in building that trust and respect. It takes time, but it's incredibly important because you really need champions in every organization to help move forward whatever goal it might be. We all know this because we work in orgs. What I see in grazing school of the West, my experience has been when I'm looking at gosh, it'd be really cool to get some folks from the Compton Cowboys up to Ojai, where we're based out of, for them to, see what work we have on the ground and see if we can recruit some of these folks in the urban center to actually learn what we're doing to take back to the urban periphery. The first thing we do in these wild ideas is finding other organizations that specifically are supporting the communities and audiences that we would like to engage with, because they know their audiences, they know they have relationships, and there's already a community in place. So for me, I don't necessarily need to just, go in cold call in folks from, who ride horses in Compton. I go to the organizers and leaders and introduce myself and what we're doing, and actually have them become collaborators and partners in communicating and inviting their audiences and the folks that they serve. Because those trust relationships are already there, and the introduction to us can be made. So when we think about land access, I think that land trusts have a huge opportunity to work with organizations that speak to or support young farmers, like the Greenhorns Coalition, who serve. That's a big community of new and beginning farmers and ranchers. Land trusts working with organizations like that who already have the audience and playing matchmaker. Those orgs playing matchmaker to folks who might be ready to roll but have limitations of land. Land trusts that already have relationships with land holders, and that linking is quite imperative. So I think there's an opportunity there. I'm a success story in that particular situation. I work with our local land conservancy who are stewarding hundreds of acres, if not thousands of acres in our valley. And at certain times of the year, we're either contracted to graze lands for invasive species management or even habitat restoration. We are providing a service to the Land Conservancy, or they're providing an off-season, when we're not getting paid to graze, land base for us to basically land and have our lambing and kidding operations before we start grazing again. They have the land base in town, and they're providing us at a no cost, and in some cases they're paying us because we are providing them a service. And that's a huge limitation for new folks. And then if you think about urban folks, prescribed grazing is a very rapidly growing industry, not just in the West, but all over the country, because we have solar grazing popping up. We have, grazing under solar panels, integrating livestock into crop systems, cover crops. These are all tenets of regenerative ag. So I share that because it's not just, fire isn't an issue everywhere else, but ecological resilience and application of grazing is being utilized in all over the country. And we need more grazers who are savvy and the ecological foundations as well as the business pieces. So think relevancy, think about, depending on where you are, I'm sure there's a grazer probably within 100, 200 miles from you who is a mobile grazer, who's moving around and perhaps not non-traditional. But that, I guess the root of that answer was the opportunity is in collaborating with organizations that already have the relationships to the very audiences that we are working to support.
Thank you, Cole. Appreciate that. Well said. What an awesome panelists. What awesome group of panelists. I'm appreciating how well you're all working off of each other and highlighting such important points. All right, well, Regan, let's go back to you with that same question. So what are the opportunities that you see to engage these communities?
So I want to echo what Cole said about partnerships. So one of the things that I see as a growing need in this community is we have a lot of older farmers that at one point had 500 acres, but over time that land has been subdivided, kids get their share, gets smaller, smaller, and smaller. And now that piece of property is maybe 100 acres. They still want to keep it in the family. They still want to keep it a reliable farm, but it's small. There's not a lot of income that can be generated from it. And especially in the San Luis area, there's a lot of these farmers that are now smaller parcels. And if somebody would partner with these farmers as a grazer, or maybe somebody can come in and rent them all so that it's a much larger parcel and can make it a viable farm. So those partnerships with the younger generation that can't afford the land, but they still want to do something. I went and talked at our local high school, and there were 3 individuals that wanted to be rancher farmers, but they saw no way of getting there because they didn't own land. Well, now you can partner, you can lease the land. There's a lot of older farmers here that have, hundreds and thousands of acres. They don't know what the heck to do with it because their kids don't want to go into it, or they didn't have enough kids or didn't have any kids. So now they just have this big farm and don't know what to do with it. So succession is really a key situation down here, and partnering with all the different agencies. The NRCS, I keep mentioning them. I partner with them quite frequently because they'll get a question from a farmer asking about bale feeding, for example. Well, they'll call me up and say, hey, do you mind if you go talk to so-and-so about what you've been doing with bale feeding? So I'll go out and talk with the farmer about what I've done and my successes with bale feeding. And we kind of take it from there, and questions pop up about other things, and that's where that relationship starts to develop. You get that trust building, then you start getting all kinds of questions about everything. So it's a double-edged sword. You can give some information, and then it's you're basically a dictionary out there. They try to use you as a dictionary. So that would be my take on it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. And yeah, that succession planning, critical piece of work that I know more and more organizations, including AFT, are trying to highlight that piece. Deidre, we see you. Yay. We can see that you're dressed up. Thanks for being here. And yeah, what are the opportunities you see to engage more diverse communities on these kinds of topics? Uh-oh. Now I can't hear you though.
You're muted.
It's that very first icon down at the bottom of the black screen.
Oh, still can't. Uh-oh, camera now, no voice. Technology. Oh, shoot.
Maybe, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Cecilia.
Maybe she's having the same problem. Mine said it was that I was unmuted and it was not.
And I don't know if we can unmute Beth or Jamie. Can you force
It
unmute
doesn't
her?
seem like I can.
I just sent her a request to, and now
Yeah.
it looks like she accidentally went out of the platform. So maybe she'll come back.
All right, let's pass it to Cecilia then, if you can, and then we'll we'll keep forging ahead. So yeah, what are some of the opportunities that you see?
So I'm going to tell you about some of the opportunities we have, the things that we're doing, because as a small organization, and for up till just a few years ago, being a one-woman operation serving the most populated area of New Mexico, it took partnerships, and we have very diverse partnerships, from agricultural landowners to agencies to even counties and other nonprofits and bird conservationists, really looking at our landscape that is important for agriculture, but also important for wildlife. We actually have a partnership with Bernalillo County, which is where Albuquerque is. Most of the farms there have been divided, and they're small. 1 to 5 acres, much bigger than 5 acres is rare. One of the goals of the county was now that they looked around and said, wow, all our farmland's gone, they decided they needed to take action. And what they did is they created a mill levy to help with protecting farmland, and also started Grow the Growers program, which is an incubator farm program where those folks that go through that program have the opportunity to go not only work on a farm in Albuquerque, but they can work at go to other people's farms. They'll bring them to my farm for a particular activity. Recently, there's been the New Mexico Extension Service is now operating a land link program. There's an extension agency in every community, and so that is a way where folks can go on and say, hey, we have land, we need a farmer, or farmers can look for land. So that's linking people who want to farm, or want to farm more than they're farming, to accessing land. And we are part of that conversation with those folks, and land trust, and we're listed on their website as another opportunity when folks are aging and wanting to know what to do with their land. And just to give you an example of what's happening in Albuquerque, is I mentioned I have a farm, and I raised my 2 sons on the farm. And now my youngest son and his wife have a small farm in Albuquerque. They make I have a grandson, so it's the small family with 1 acre. And what they're doing is not only farming their 1 acre, but they're farming parcels in the community where the landowners are older. They don't want to farm anymore, but they want to see their land being stewarded and stay in production. So they're working with folks like my son, and there's a number of scenarios like that in Albuquerque. Those are very often the people selling at the farmers markets. And so really showcasing those stories is really an opportunity for us. And in fact, we're going to do one of our fundraisers there in Bernalillo County at their farm, so that they can really talk about this model of keeping ag in production, having an opportunity for young people to afford to farm. So those are just some of the opportunities. Again, we work with so many partners, and the way when we meet with a landowner, we like to take a bundle of carrots and bring our partners out there. Once we have those initial conversations and understand what their goals are for their land, we bring our partners out there, and usually they will take 1 carrot, and that usually leads to them taking a whole bunch.
Awesome. Thank you, Cecilia. All right, Deidre, we see you back, and I think maybe I hear you. Uh-oh. Nope, can't hear you. So always the most frustrating thing. I feel you. Sorry for your pain. Well, what we could do is start breakouts a little bit earlier, and then see if we can't help Deidre sort the technology piece, so we could kind of come back to your answer as we wrap. I'm getting some TA there right now. Working on other people's. So yeah, why don't we pivot to the breakouts and then hopefully come back. I'll make note to Deidre as well about that. I'm just gonna speak out loud to my co-facilitator, since Deidre might not be able to speak. Can we make sure there's somebody in her breakout room to help support that?
Gabrielle, we would like to keep Deidre's breakout room in this main room to reduce how many times she has to do something. So everybody, and Jamie, I can see your square, but this is going to work out similarly. Gabrielle, we've already done breakout rooms. And so folks, we're going to put in the chat which room you're going to. You see that you are in Deidre's room. Stay here. Does that make sense? Jamie, does that work?
Yes, I'm starting it now.
Okay. Now, Gabrielle, how long do you want us to be in there?
So we'll spend about 12 minutes in the breakout rooms, and I just put, now the chat's getting busy, but the question that I'm posing for folks, which is in the chat, you'll have to scroll up, maybe I'll put it in again too after the breakout, but the questions that I have really for the folks participating, and your participant conversationalist is going to help you answer this as well, or kind of, be a part of the conversation, and you feel free to ask them questions too. But the questions are, how are you, or how would you like to be working with historically underserved farmers and landowners? What barriers are you facing, and what successes perhaps have you had? So, and it doesn't matter where you're starting this process. We just want to kind of hear from you. So it looks like we've got the groups. And any other instructions, Jamie or Beth, on how to join rooms?
We'll send a push notification when it's a minute. We're going to start the timer at 12, and good luck. Again, if you're in Deidre's room, stay here, please. Also, if you need help identifying which room you're in, just shout out, because we can look it up real quick. I still can't see Daedra's little square. Oh, there she is. Oh, there you are. Oh, I can see you coming off on your camera. Can you? There you are. We can see you. Can we hear you? So there's three in the black square that you see of your video. There are 3 dots down in the right-hand corner. No. There's three dots. That's like all the way to the, okay. And if you hit that, you see settings. And then if you're looking for your audio. And so sometimes your computer just picks a different mic because it's mean. And believe me, if I could fix it from here, I would. So I'll let you know when I can hear you, but can you give me a thumbs up if you see those 3 dots? Have you found settings in those 3 dots? Can you see audio? And are there choices when you hit that down arrow on different audio? So choose a different mic. Like I have 3 I can choose from. So did we just lose you? Oh, she's back. Okay. So I have 3 mics to choose from in that audio. Try the first one and the second one and the third one. It looks like you're from Blade Runner right now. The video. I know, sorry. It's just a. Okay. I'm not sure. We can't call in. There's no number to call in, is there? Oh, Jamie, what do we do?
No, Deidre, if you can call me, call my cell phone number. I'll put it in the chat again. I might be able to help you.
Should we try to have a conversation?
We could. So yes. So the prompt questions are in the chat.
Okay.
Anybody want to speak up about what work they're already doing or want to do?
Yeah. How are you working with underserved farmers, landowners? What barriers have you run into? And what has worked? What successes have you had?
And we can come off camera in a breakout room. Let's
Yeah, please come off camera if you can.
And wave to each other.
Thank you, Rhiannon, for
and also
doing that.
stop Deidre with good vibes right here, right now.
Good Robin, Thomas, Ziani.
All right.
Awesome. So nice
we
to
just
see
woke
your
everybody up.
faces. There we go. So have any of you engaged with historically underserved groups, or maybe that's the main focus for your organization? Issues you run into, things that are holding you back from doing that, perhaps. Solutions.
I know in our organization, it's becoming more pertinent. In the past, we haven't tracked it in any way. We don't really go out and seek landowners. Like, it's kind of one of our core things as far as the easements we do, is we're not trying to convince anyone to do an easement. We're just trying to be there if they decide they want an easement and to help educate them on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we haven't really ever gone after certain types of groups, right? One of those being historically underserved. But now a lot of the grants that we're applying for want us to have that data to show that we're doing that work. And so it's kind of this catch-22 that we as an organization are in right now. And we're still in the early phases. You know, we're just having the discussion of like, maybe we need to start keeping track of those demographics because we don't even have the numbers of who makes up our easements at this point, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any responses to that, or feeling like you're in a similar position, or?
Just me.
No, it is not you. I have things to share, but I didn't want to hog the microphone. Deidre, was that you that I heard? Maybe. Maybe not. We'll keep going with our conversation, and we'll be flexible whenever Deidre is able. Carrie, did I see you come off of them?
Yeah, I guess I can chime in. In our service area, we don't have a lot of underserved farmers and ranchers.
I'm so sorry, Carrie.
Recommended that I turn off.
To interrupt you, I just wanted to say, Deidre, we can hear you.
Yep, Jamie and Deidre, that worked.
Are you there, Deidre?
Yes, but leave my camera off.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to go back to Carrie. She was talking, but we would love for you to then chime in. So Carrie, please go ahead. I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, and I don't know, I guess I feel a little weird speaking up because what I was saying is we don't really have a lot of historically underserved farmers and ranchers in our service area. And I know there's a big push for that right now. Most, the one demographic that we do have is the Hispanic population, mostly from Mexico and Peru. And a lot of those people, they're farm workers, but they're not looking to buy, they don't have access to land. They're not looking to buy land. And, I have pretty minimal Spanish skills. And so it's one of those interesting things where I'd love to be doing more in this area, but we just don't really have those populations. So it's kind of a weird spot to be in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's totally a fair answer. I don't know if anybody wanted to share with Carrie and say, hey, you're not alone.
Where are you based out of, Carrie? Oh, there you answered. Thanks.
Yeah, we're in South Central Idaho. So yeah.
Pretty white.
It's a pretty white place.
But with the farm workers, like you said, so not pretty white, I guess.
Yeah.
But in terms of landowners, yeah, kind of thinking back to some of those graphs that Gabrielle showed and how less than 2% of farmland is owned by people of color, So, Deidre, if you want to chime in here if you're able to hear what we're talking about and have wisdom to share.
Okay, yeah, I think y'all can hear me now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm having these technical difficulties. Bonnie, could you I'm looking for the question, our first question. And
yeah. So we were sort of talking, the first question from Gabrielle was like, how are you, or how would you like to work with historically underserved farmers or landowners? What barriers have you faced? What successes have you had? And so far we've had two very interesting comments that about working in a region where most of the landowners are white, kind of like that graph that Gabrielle was, or the percentage that Gabrielle shared at the beginning, which is not an accident that most of the land is owned by white people in the United States. So for people in those types of areas, I don't know, but the question really is if you have any suggestions for them, or kind of linking back to this bigger issue of how do we help people who are like farm workers access land, become landowners, and become someone to work with a land trust.
Okay, well, yeah, a lot of
the work that we do centers around perception. You know, there's sometimes a perception that, you know, farm workers don't want to be landowners, or that, you know, and some of them do. It just seems like such, you know, if they're in a new country here, especially, this is not their native country, it probably feels like it's something that's so far away from actually happening.
Yeah.
I think that exposure has a lot to do with it. Also, when we're thinking about generational transfers and succession planning, there's opportunities in there for who's you know, this might not be their native country. They have skill sets, they have access. So finding land to transfer from families that they may have been working for, or just, I mean, I think it's twofold, right? Because you have landowners on one side that are also knowing that they are aging out of this industry, and they're looking for someone who's responsible, who has aligned values and synergies. And I think if we encourage them, you know, that it's okay to do things. You can't take this land with you. If you don't have anyone in your direct line to lead to, then you do want to start looking at, you know, those responsible persons outside of your family dynamic who give your operation a chance at surviving.
Yeah, and kind of like getting creative. Like, I know there was a strawberry farm in California where the owner was in that situation, and they sold the operation to their farm workers, like as a co-op.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Selling it to a co-op, putting it in a trust. You know, I work with a lot of families, so there's a huge gamut of different ways that you could structure a deal like this. I would just say, you know, having open mind, listening to what the wishes of the landowner are, and pairing them or matching them with people who would be, you know, instrumental, I guess, in carrying on that legacy or continuing that business.
Yeah.
So definitely things that come up in the land tenure conversation. Those of you that are really far removed from people, maybe it's opportunities where you can open up, like if you have a place where people can stay overnight, you know, you can open up your ranches or your farms for exploratory visits, and allow people to come out and learn your farming practices, or teach you their practices and where they're coming from.
I know we have
all about approach.
I love that idea, and I just want to let you know that people are going to start coming back in from all of the rooms now. But I don't know if you wanted to finish your thought there, Deidre.
I just think that it's important to be good listeners, and then there are language barriers, you know, just finding at the community level, like a lot of that support happens at the local level. So
there we go.
Yeah, I think just knowing your allies in the community and what strengths and resources each one brings would make some of those, you know, desires a little bit more attainable. Like you want to have a group, having translators, having a program, et cetera, et cetera.
Nice to hear your voice again, Deidre. Sorry we lost you there for a little bit. Well, I think everyone's, I think is everybody back? I'm not seeing the whole number. I don't know if some people dropped off though. So is that probably everybody who's left?
I will pull them back in.
Okay. Well, I know we're almost at time, and I just wanted to, okay, well, I'll wait till I see everybody coming in. Their numbers are getting bigger. Okay. Well, I just wanted to kind of just take a moment. I know we're about to wrap up in the next 5 minutes, and for those of you on the East Coast, it's getting late. And I just wanted to do something that I forgot to do before we went for the breakouts. I got dismayed by the technical challenges. I just really want to acknowledge the panelists and their expertise and insight and the amazing work that they're doing. It's kind of amazing. I know all of you, and I hope all of you are getting compensated well for the work you do, but I am also sensing that you probably do a lot of work because it's what's in your heart. So thank you for that, because it's important work and there's more of it to be done. So I hope we've seeded some kind of cool conversations here today. Probably for the sake of time, we might not have enough kind of time to kind of hear back from each of the groups, but I hope people will kind of share resources that have come up, follow up with our panelists. I included actually everybody's contact in the slides, although you didn't all see that. And I shared, I might just try to share that really quickly and we can kind of end on that piece. Hopefully you can see that. I'm just going to leave it in that view if that's okay, but although it's not a very good view of, anyways, I can post everyone's contact information, but I know they were all really excited to be a part of this conversation with you here today. And yeah, maybe just to close things, I would pass it, around to my panelists to say a final word. And just because we don't have a lot of time, maybe you can just keep it to 1 or 2 words that you kind of are taking with you as a result of this conversation. So let's just follow the same order again. Cole, Reagan, Deidre, and Cecilia. 1 or 2 words of kind of what you're taking from today's conversation yourself and carrying forward. Cole, can I pass it back to you?
Yeah, solidarity.
Yay. Reagan?
I would say keep learning and always be a student of life.
Nice. Thank you. Deidre?
Collaboration is key. Partner. No one is out here alone. So many of us doing all this great work, and just be encouraged and reach out for your partners. Cole, I'll be reaching to you later.
Yay. Live action collaboration. And Cecilia?
So building on everything everybody else said, and also just establishing trust and listening. Listen to folks and their needs.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you all. Round of applause for all of our panelists and for all of you participants.